The year is 1937, and the Germans are about to unleash something terrifying on the world. It is called the Enigma machine, and it is a device that can do math faster than any human ever could. In fact, it can do math so fast that its calculations would take billions of years to complete. The numbers, letters, and words we use every day are all based on mathematical equations. So if someone could crack these codes, they would know exactly what everyone was doing at all times. This led many people to believe that the Enigma machine was completely unbreakable. But a small group of British mathematicians and code breakers led by the brilliant, but socially awkward Alan Turing proved them wrong. What happened next would shorten one of the deadliest wars in human history by 2 years and save millions of lives. It would also lay the groundwork for the digital age and change the world forever. Now before we get started, keep in mind that this video is mostly about math. Now if math sounds boring to you, then why don't you just click off now, because this video isn't gonna not be fun for you. But if you like math, then let me ask you a question. How fast can your brain do math? Take your time and try to be accurate. Well, how about I double those numbers? If I were to ask you how fast your brain could do this, you'd probably say half as fast. If I were to triple those numbers, it would take your brain 3 times as long, and so on. Now try to figure out how long it would take your brain to do this. If you figured out that it would take approximately 18 years, then congratulations, you're a math genius. But if you didn't get the answer, then don't worry, because even a child could do it faster. All they need to do is plug the problem into an abacus and boom, done in seconds. But during World War II, there was another machine that could do complex math problems even faster than an abacus. It was called the Enigma machine, and it was invented by a German company. But soon enough, the military began using it across Europe and even Asia. It had a keyboard that when pressed produced a letter or number. Then after a little bit of math, it spit out a new letter or number. For example, if you press the button C, the machine might spit out the number 7. And if you press the button 7, the machine might spit out the word apple. If you were to press the buttons in a specific order, then it would spell out a coded message. And if you gave this message to someone who knew the machine, they would be able to plug it back into an Enigma machine and decode the message. At first glance, the Enigma machine looked relatively simple. But when you actually sat down and tried to figure out how it worked, you realized that it was extremely complicated. In fact, the machine could generate billions of different combinations. It would take a person thousands of years to run through all of the machine's calculations. So once Germany began encrypting messages with the Enigma machine, the rest of the world assumed that the messages were unbreakable. That is until 1932, when Polish mathematicians discovered a way to exploit some of the machine's weaknesses. They built a device to help break the Enigma code and shared their discovery with the French and British. Soon enough, Britain set up a top-secret facility in Bletchley Park where over 8,000 code breakers worked in near total secrecy. One of them was a man named Alan Turing. He was a genius mathematician who had recently returned to Britain after studying at German universities. But he wasn't always invited to the smartest parties. In fact, he was kind of a loner. When the war broke out, he wanted to join the military, but because he was considered undesirable, he never got in. So instead, he spent the entire war at Bletchley Park. As soon as he learned about the Enigma machine, he was determined to break its code. But when he first presented his ideas, no one listened. Many thought that the Enigma machine was completely unbreakable, but Turing continued trying to find weaknesses. He eventually partnered up with mathematician Gordon Welchman to build a machine that could break the Enigma code. Together, they created something called the bomb machine. It was basically an early computer that could quickly go through all of the Enigma machine's calculations and find patterns. With the bomb machine, Turing and his team could test thousands of possibilities in a matter of minutes. But unlike the Enigma machine, the bomb couldn't do the math itself. It could only test the results. For example, if you asked it to plus to equals what, it would immediately tell you 4. But if you asked it to plus to equals what, it would struggle for hours. Eventually, the bomb would figure out the answer. But by then, the sun would explode and the earth would crumble to dust. Anyways, Turing and his team were finally able to give the British military a massive advantage against the Germans. Before long, they had broken so many Enigma codes. The Germans changed the machine's settings every few days. This made it slightly more difficult to break the codes. But it didn't stop Turing and his team. They simply rebuilt their machines to account for the new challenge and kept breaking the German codes. By the end of the war, historians estimate that Turing's work shortened the war by 2 years and saved millions of lives. But despite his genius, he was treated like trash. You see, even though his work was kept a secret, it still leaked to some people in the British government. They were initially very happy about it, but when the war ended, they weren't sure what to do with Turing and his team. Military leaders believed that since the war was over, the Enigma machine would no longer be used. Therefore, there was no reason to continue the project, and civilians didn't know about the project, so they saw no reason for it to continue either. The government told Turing to destroy all of the bomb machines, which he did. Then they charged him with a crime. Even though he had helped win the war, they accused him of stealing government property. That wasn't technically true because he hadn't stolen anything. He had simply destroyed the machines under direct orders from the military. But in court, no one believed him. And in 1952, he was sentenced to prison for 8 months. Unable to cope with being treated this way, he took his own life. Today, he's remembered as one of the most brilliant mathematicians and computer scientists of all time. He laid the foundations for artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and cryptography. Basically, everything we take for granted today: smartphones, credit cards, internet banking, GPS, X-rays, and the list goes on. All of these things were made possible by Alan Turing. But this wasn't the only positive impact that breaking the Enigma code had on society. It also accelerated the invention of the computer. Before the Enigma machine, nobody really cared much about calculating stuff really fast. There were plenty of people around to do that. But when a machine capable of doing calculations faster than a human brain came along, suddenly the whole world wanted one. In 1946, the world's first general-purpose computer was unveiled to the public. It was called Colossus Mark I. It was built in Britain and was primarily used to break German naval codes. But there was a problem. These machines were very expensive and hard to build. It took a team of over 2,500 engineers and scientists for years to build the first Colossus, and it occupied a building the size of a football field. Even though the computer was extremely powerful, it wasn't very useful. It couldn't perform any tasks that a human couldn't already do. It was literally just a really fast calculator. The computer's designers were aware of this. They simply built it to do a single job: decipher German communications. But that didn't make it any less frustrating for other people who wanted to use the machine for other purposes. One of them was a man named John von Neumann. He was a mathematician who had worked on America's first atomic bomb. He helped design a computer called the ADVAC that could be programmed to perform any calculation. It was considered the first electronic general-purpose computer. But even though it was incredibly advanced for the time, it occupied a room the size of a tennis court. Still, progress was being made. Meanwhile, around the same time, another man named John Presper Eckert was busy building a computer that could be small enough to fit in a suitcase. But when he showed it to the army, they weren't interested. They had no use for something that could only fit on a table. Instead, Eckert teamed up with another scientist, John Mosley, to build a larger version that could occupy an entire room. They called it the UNIVAC, and it was the first commercial computer. It was used by the U.S. Census Bureau to count the population of the United States. This was a huge task since the country had over 150 million residents at the time. It took the UNIVAC 6 months to complete the job, but it was still 50 times faster than a human. Since then, computers have become smaller, cheaper, and faster than ever before. This has allowed nearly every country in the world to afford them. But throughout all of this progress, no one has ever forgotten Alan Turing. Today, he's celebrated as one of the founding fathers of computer science. Many believe that without him, the world would be a very different place today. Now I want to ask you a question. Can you imagine a world without computers or the internet? Could we even have a World War III? Let us know in the comments below. Also, if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit subscribe because we've barely scratched the surface of the crazy things happening in our world today. As always, stay happy, healthy, and nerdy.